Welcome this week, heroes, to the Storied Coaching Podcast. This week, the topic that I'm going to be talking about is something that has been bouncing around in my head as a possibility, as something through my own learning and my own investment in myself. And what I'm always telling you is that we're always writing our next story. We're always stepping into a new version of ourselves, hopefully, evolving into a new hero, moving on in other adventures, other quests, in order to become the better version of ourselves that we want to be. And that process never stops, hopefully, until you die. That is what you want to keep doing. And in doing this, I've been going on an adventure as far as looking at key paradoxes. And this is something that I was wrestling with over the last probably about 2.5 years ago. I started realizing there were these things in my life, in my personal life, in my business life, in my leadership position, in my relationship with my vendors and also my employees, with my colleagues, also with my customers and my clients, where there were these things that seemed like they were opposite of each other and seemed like they couldn't coexist at the same time, but for some reason were. And that bothered me because in my brain, and I think a lot of our brains as humans, we want things to be black or white. We want the thing we're moving towards to either be the right thing or the wrong thing. That way we can map our progress and move along in our own hero's journey, whether that's building our business or whether that's becoming a better parent or whether it's working on a relationship with your partner. You're trying to find the right path. And so my brain really wanted to reject that there could be two things that coexisted at the same time that seemed completely diametrically opposed to each other, but for some reason you can hold them in balance and they actually might get you closer to your goal than you thought. So Aaron, what are you talking about? Fair enough. So a key paradox, let me give you a few examples. So a key paradox might be, for instance, doctors and nurses, when we're working with them or when they're working with patients, they want to provide the highest quality healthcare, but we also want them to do it at the lowest price point possible so that it's affordable for everyone. So highest quality, but lowest price point. Those seem like they can't coexist together, that you have to choose one or the other. But we're constantly trying, and they're constantly trying how to figure that out so they can help more people, raise their standards of healthcare and what they're able to do and how they're able to heal, but at the same time, make it accessible to everyone and lower cost. And so, in another way, another key paradox. For instance, a lot of you know that my background is in being a performer and then in being a producer and a director. And now I make videos with our marketing side of our business. And so with that, I'm working with a lot of creatives. And creatives and artists and performers, they want to maintain their artistic integrity and what drives them, what they're passionate about and the work itself. But they also want to make a sack full of cash. And those seem like they can't go together. Some people will even call someone who's an artist or a performer and they start making money, they'll call them a sellout. And that can make people that I've worked with and students that I've worked with can make them feel like, oh, I have to choose one or the other. Either my artistic integrity, that means I have to stay a starving artist, which is complete bullshit, or I sell out and I go for cash. No, those are key paradoxes. Those can, by working together and by almost grinding at each other, you can figure out a way to make them balance. And so those are just two examples. There's lots of examples in your life. For instance, parents who want to spend more time with their kids, but also crave and need alone time. And that can often, those two things fighting each other can make them feel like I'm a bad parent because I also want alone time. And the feelings of guilt can come up and things like that. So how can you work on things like that and hold both of them at the same time? Allow them both to be true, that you want to be a great parent, that you also want and crave alone time in order to grow your business, in order to work on yourself, and that by doing those two things that seem opposite of each other, they actually make it so that you're better at both. So that was my journey with key paradoxes and making peace with that and not feeling bad about it, that those two things exist, not trying to resolve it, get rid of one or the other, but allow them to exist at the same time and realize that they can make maybe something better than their whole. So I started to realize, all right, if there are key paradoxes, then what is the opposite of that, and does it exist? And I started really thinking about this, and it's come to me in the form of something that I'm defining right now, what is called key harmonies. What are things that are not paradoxical to each other and seem like they shouldn't exist, but things that when you add one thing onto another that might seem different at first, they actually harmonize with each other. And like a great piece of music, the harmonies, the melody, and also the harmony that goes with it combine in such a way that it makes it so much better than them individually. And that it can really just fill you up and make something bigger and better than when they exist individually. And so I started to wonder, what are those things? And I had this in my brain a bit when I started on my own personal journey several years ago with studying Stoicism. Now, I took an intro philosophy class like a lot of us did in college, and Stoicism wasn't one of the things that we touched on. And I became aware of it through Ryan Holiday and how popular he's become with some of his books and his teachings and things like that. And it made me go ahead and start picking up meditations by Marcus Aurelius, about his journey and his basically a journal of this great emperor that tried to live a Stoic principled life. And if you're not familiar with Stoicism, it's not religious based. It's really just I would say it's tactical in that it's an instruction manual that you can go ahead and start to put different elements and apply them to the different areas of your life, of family and business and your interactions with other human beings, that try to make you centered in a more, what they would call a natural state where there's an equilibrium, not highs, not so many highs, not so many lows, but an equilibrium, and learning how to control what you can control and letting go of the rest. When we call someone stoic, think about what that means to you. They're kind of unflappable. Maybe if you're saying they're stoic, that you feel like they don't have a lot of reactions. Like if the house is on fire or whatever, like they would be the one that stayed calm in that situation and were able to help everyone. And so that was something that was interesting to me and I wanted to learn more about. And as I learned more and more about Stoicism and the tenets or the pillars of Stoicism, it made me realize that, this is a great example of key harmonies. Things that when blended together, individually, they're amazing. But when you try to go ahead and layer them on top of each other and use them in tandem, that it makes something even better that creates that sort of harmony. So a useful example of this would be, for instance, the 4 pillars of Stoicism. And if you're not already familiar with this, there's basically 4 main tenets of it. If you think of it like as a tent that's being held up by 4 tent poles, each tent pole is important to hold up the tent. And so you've got justice, courage, wisdom, and moderation. And the people that embraced this philosophy, felt that these 4 elements made a person, a human, balanced and helped them to be able, any adversity that came at them, anything that they might be dealing with in their life, whether it's a small annoyance or a really big deal, or the sky is falling, or an amazing thing that happened, that you keep it in perspective, and that by joining these things together, creating a harmonious experience would allow you to live a more fulfilled and a more peaceful life. And I love that idea. I really love that idea of moving towards an equilibrium of a peaceful life by using these tenets. So for instance, justice. That's a wonderful thing to be a just person. And if you're in a leadership position, being able to hear from someone, or it might be a conflict that is happening between 2 employees, or something that's happening with a customer, something like that. Like, how do you be fair? How do you weigh those things? Just like the scales, how do you weigh what is fair for them and what is fair for you and your business, and be able to come out at something where everyone feels like that is a fair solution? where it's not weighted towards you and your selfish goals, because that turns customers and turns employees off, and they can see that. And that's not long-term a leadership style that is sustainable. That's when you start getting attrition and turnover and things like that, because people can see that you're just out for yourself. You're always trying to pull one over on them. So how can you be just in your dealings if we're looking at this through a business lens? And if you layer on top of that the harmony of courage, being courageous enough to actually, let's say there is a situation that happens with a client, being courageous enough to call a spade. Say, hey, you know what? I absolutely see that the delivery date slipped on that. We said we were going to deliver it last week. We're only going to be able to get to it and deliver it next week. In order to be fair, let's find out a solution here. It might be knocking the price down a bit. It might be giving them some extra love in the form of services or something like that, some extra coaching. But realizing that you're human, not trying to hide it, and having the courage to be honest about it and to be just. Those things you can see might be something that you can combine and that would help each other to achieve something greater than those individual melodies, that it's a harmony that's even greater. It's vibrating at a higher frequency that's better for everyone. Now, if you layer on top of justice and courage, wisdom, all of your experiences, if you're in a leadership position, the reason you should be in a leadership position is because you've been through some shit. You've seen things that have happened, and you know different roads that have been tried that might help the team to be able to make a better plan, to have the wisdom to know, okay, I have the courage and I know that I want to be just in this situation. And from my store of wisdom over time, going through my different heroes' journeys, going on different quests and evolving, becoming a better person, hopefully, now I have some wisdom to lay over here as well that will hopefully guide us to a better solution faster. I love that idea. So we've got those three lenses now. We've got justice, courage, and wisdom. Now, what about moderation? Moderation, at first, I thought this one seems like an outlier. Justice, courage, wisdom. I get that. Those three seem like they kind of go together like peanut butter and jelly. But moderation, at first, I was like, I didn't really struggle with it, but I found it fascinating. It's like, why is moderation a main tentpole? I can see why moderation would be good, whether that's with alcohol or food or pleasure or short-term, what I've talked about in the past, short-term dopamine, short-term things that make you feel happy in the moment, but may or may not be good for you long-term. Okay. So that I started to see like, oh, okay, if a person is living a life where they are using justice, courage, wisdom, moderation is really the human experience as far as when we are seeking pleasure, which is totally natural and very, very human of us to do. Our brains are always looking for the shortest path to dopamine, whether that's food or drugs or alcohol or fun things, excitement, adventure. All of these things can be wonderful in moderate doses that don't make us have huge swings high and huge swings low, that might have a detriment to our family or our experiences or our business. Some of you might have had experiences with people that have had, not a lot of moderation when it came to substances or when it came to relationships and not having good boundaries, and they don't have the moderation there and other things fall by the wayside. So I started to realize like, oh, okay, moderation does belong in this group. I understand now that if you layer that with wisdom, with courage, and with justice, that you're trying to maintain an equilibrium, to take out all of the huge highs and the low lows, so that you are having a more peaceful experience and you're not self-sabotaging. So this is what I wanted to talk about as far as key paradoxes and key harmonies. Now, what might be some things in your life that are like key harmonies, that stack on top of each other and make what we call a synergistic effect? 1 + 1 doesn't necessarily equal 2. That's what a synergistic effect means. It means 1 + 1 might equal 5, because combined, that harmony makes something so much bigger than its whole that it helps you get better results faster. So is there something in your life that you could start applying, that you could start doing in your business, where if you started doing those things in tandem, you might get to your result faster. You might get to the new version of yourself, your new version of your business faster as well. So I love this image of finding things in our life that are a net positive, that we already know that are, and then stacking them, tempering and rounding out each other. So that when a person applies them to one cause, a task, or a situation that they're faced with, they have a better possibility of reaching a natural state of balance. So for those of you that might not have known a lot about Stoicism, this is not something that I would say, and I just told you exactly everything that Stoicism is. This was a very layman's, probably a little bit fumbly explanation of what Stoicism is. And I would encourage you to find out more about it. It's something that we're going to start working with our students as well, along with using cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT techniques as well, to help people and entrepreneurs in their business to be able to make, like I said, that synergistic effect, something that's bigger than the individual things. But when you combine them and stack them, make something even bigger and better for their business, for their life, for their relationships, for their body, for the results they want to get in their lives, so they can move towards that new version and that new story that they want. So this week, I'd like you to think about what are some of the things that are getting you great results in your life right now, personally, professionally, as a leader as well. And could you combine any of them? Or are there any new ones that you've noticed other people might be doing that you'd like to try to introduce, that you think if you stack it on top of what you're doing already might give you a bigger and better result and get you to where you want to go faster? Think about the key harmonies you might have in your life that you could start doing that with. I'd love to hear the results that you're getting. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week.